Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be included here. I'm very excited about what I'm going to show you today. Um, I recently began working for the AI and Machine Learning Competency Center at the University for Oxford, which is a relatively new competency center created under the Digital Transformation Program. And our work revolves around trying to accelerate the integration of AI across the university to some 40,000 people that we serve into administrative workflows, research workflows, and again, education, which is why I felt it was particularly relevant for me to be speaking with you all here today. Um, I come from Stockholm, Sweden, and so we have a particular cultural tradition here in the north. And the more that I was playing with these generative AI apps and tools and things like this, the more I started thinking of this metaphor of one of our old gods, of Loki, who you may recognize from the Marvel recreation with Loki and Thor. I see it as a very helpful metaphor for aiding in critical thinking and not taking things that it spits out at face value. And I'll go into more of why that's the case. Um, so all of you probably recognize all of these major brands and tools and have integrated with the bots ahead of time. But again, well-known knowledge at this point. We don't really know how they work. They're consistently referred to as a black box in terms of how the neural networks actually function. If you input something, you'll get a specific output, but we don't really understand exactly what generates that output. If you want to tweak the output, then you have to put in a new input. Anthropic is doing more work in terms of diving into the neural net exactly and figuring how that's working, but a lot of work remains to be done in this space. And so, what does that mean for the application of it? We know that this is a highly useful tool. It's so useful that even if we don't support the adoption of it across the university, there are literally hundreds of researchers and administrative personnel that are using it on their own. And so we jump into the space in order to try to help them use it in a good way, both inside of the classroom and outside of it, and to help the next generation of students use it to maximize the benefit of its application in their work. But it's unpredictable. It's even if you put in the same prompt to the same model multiple times, you'll get different outputs. Least of all, putting in that same prompt across many different models. So what does that mean for us as we go forward, as these continue to develop? Um, just like the trickster god Loki, who was famous for in Scandinavian culture for giving people what they want, what they're asking for, what they're wishing for, but not necessarily what they need in a kind of clever way. These new tools, these new entities, if you will, are very powerful. They lend themselves to a certain kind of mystique and almost a magic. I know that the first time I started using any of these tools, specifically ChatGPT, I would input something and it's like the words would magically appear on the page. And so there is a kind of mysticism that's involved here. Not only that, but they're also very persuasive and charismatic in the same way that Loki would be, trying to convince you of something. If you input something and you get a specific output that doesn't align with what you were trying to get, it's easy to feel frustrated and then to respond with that frustration, saying, "This isn't what I was looking for at all." And then the model, specifically ChatGPT and often Claude as well, would respond with this very kind of charismatic, and I'm very sorry for this. This is entirely my fault. Please let me try again. And it builds this almost like a rapport back and forth, where I can't help but sort of feel like I'm falling into its trust almost in a way. And then the last thing is that Loki here was famous for transforming into different shapes, right? Different animals, fish to escape somebody who was trying to hold him account for something mischievous that he did, and a horse on one occasion. And in that same way, we can think of models as also transforming, as being multimodal, as moving information from text into tables and images and videos and back and forth across different kinds of language. We've all, I'm sure, played with trying to translate Shakespearean English into like pirate English or something else like that, back and forth. But most specifically and most relevant in this context is that both Loki and the models, on occasion, more and more rarely now, but will hallucinate information, which is something that the previous speaker was touching on there in terms of making up references. So many occasions now, speaking with researchers at Oxford and feeling this frustration around, I was working on this niche topic and I couldn't find any references for it. And I asked GPT, and lo and behold, my wish was granted. And I had 10 really specific references that I was amazed I hadn't stumbled on before. But then, of course, following them up, turns out they were just smoke and mirrors. There's nothing actually there. And even now that the model is being updated and can search the internet and find links for things, it'll say things, reference the links, and then I'll follow up on the link, and lo and behold, there's nothing there. It's a 404 page or something of that nature on occasion, not every time, certainly. So, what are we supposed to do, especially for our students who find themselves in a very tricky situation now where you go to the internet, you go to these sources because you acknowledge your own ignorance. You have a question about something, you want to learn something, and you go there seeking knowledge, which means, by the very nature of this act and this relationship, that you are not in a position to evaluate the information that you get. So how do we prevent people from accepting the information that they're getting hook, line, and sinker, especially when these models are getting better and better at conveying information in a way that maybe isn't obviously at first pass a hallucination? One way is to keep in mind this idea of a plausibility machine. Loki helps with that. The sort of metaphor of Loki, certainly, that the output, these machines are designed to output what is plausible, what is acceptable, and not necessarily what is factual, right? In the same way that Loki shows illusions and grants wishes in a way that makes you feel good, but doesn't necessarily give you what you need. Um, and that's why I particularly like this phrasing of dealing with a trickster god, right? Because it has two sides to it. You make a deal with these programs. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to, exchange my time and effort and energy and attention to this product because I want something back from it. I want it to help me maximize my productivity, maximize the impact of my work. But also in that same vein, I have to understand how to deal with the nature of these products so that I don't end up being taken too much for a ride. And in order to help students maximize the impact and the productivity of using these products, I encourage this multi-pronged approach. So starting off by just at face value, don't accept the information that it gives you. Critically evaluate everything that's coming your way and don't accept that it is the gospel truth, right? Follow up on any of the AI generated references that it gives you, even the links that it gives you straight to the internet where you assume, well, this is clearly coming from somewhere. In some cases, it's not. And then to try to cross-reference the outputs across different Gen AI platforms. So if you go to ChatGPT and get an output, try to do the same thing to Perplexity, try to do the same thing to Claude, verify the information across the board. And when it comes to students specifically and trying to produce research and acquire and accumulate knowledge, I encourage them to use specialized research AI tools. And I'm going to present four of those, or very briefly today. The first one, you're all very familiar with it. It's Elicit here. You can input a research question into it, and it'll even help you shape the research question. And it'll read through the most relevant papers, do a very brief literature review of those papers. But the really cool thing is that it will organize those papers into a table here at the bottom. And you can see here there are several different columns, from paper with information about the DOI and such things to the abstract summary. And then I've selected these additional columns of main findings and methodology. And it reads through the papers, extracts the information, uses AI to summarize it and comprehend it, and puts it in those two cells. And I can create whatever columns I want here. So I can add in, is this paper particularly relevant for this niche subtopic or something like that? And it'll go through and read it and create a response based on that. So in this way, I can very quickly review a bunch of papers, look into them without necessarily reading every single word, and then I understand where to focus my attention as I dive deeper. And this one doesn't hallucinate papers. It's going to pull from papers that are genuine and that actually exist. The same is true for consensus, only it reviews papers and then around a certain question, and then we'll give you a reflection on whether the majority of the research supports the question or goes against it. In this case, exercise seems to be predominantly, or the research seems to support the hypothesis that exercise is good for sleep. Sorry. And then if you put in different questions, you'll get different responses, and you can see where the debate is, where it remains.
We've got about a minute left, Anders.
Oh, right. Thank you so much. Doc Analyzer is a great tool for being able to input whatever text you want, whatever PDFs you want, and it's not going to generate responses and information based on that text. If you say, do any of these documents contain information about X, Y, and Z? It'll say no, if that's the case. And this is really good for identifying gaps in the literature. And then this is an add-on for Zotero, works in 6 and 7, and it uses your own research papers that you've uploaded. And so you can have a conversation with those. Doesn't hallucinate any information as far as I can tell. Obviously not 100% certain, but really excellent and relevant. I'll leave you with this quote: "Trust the trickster, but tread with care. The weight of truth is yours to bear." And for those of you wondering where it came from, it doesn't actually exist. An AI generated it. So if you accepted it at face value, then you've got a lot to learn from Luki. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Another great talk, and sorry for rushing you at the end there, Anders.
Not at all. I'm glad you did.
It was a brilliant talk. Thank you. If you do have a question for Anders, if you could raise your hand, we've got about 2 minutes. Just have a quick look in the chat to see if there's anything in there. I can see lots of people agreeing with lots of the resources that you've put in there, Anders, which is great to see.
If anybody does have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm always available to have conversations about this topic.
Phil, can I mean, my microphone's still open. I put it in the text, but if you keep challenging it that it's lying, it will eventually agree that it's trying to please you.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I've played around with that.
It has been trained to please you.
It was a really interesting conversation. I forget which one it was. I saw it on Instagram where somebody asked it if it was lying on purpose. And it said, no, I'm not capable of that. That requires an emotional response. And it said, do you have that? It says, no, I don't. So are you capable of lying? Not really. Are you fabricating this information? Yes. Why are you doing that? To appease you.
Has it done that when you've given it an answer that you know it's given you that's correct? Has it then, you've challenged it and it's agreed? Have you done that one?
Oh, trying to get it to, if I say that this information is incorrect, but I know it to be true.
Yeah.
And then whether it will agree with you or not. I haven't pushed it to that limit, but I'd be really interested to see about that. It's so interesting. I was having a conversation with the advanced voice model the other day, and I tried to get it to sing to me. It absolutely refused because it went against the guidelines. And after pressing it about 10 times in a row, it then took the message it was giving me where it said, I can't sing for you. That goes against my guidelines. And it sang it to me.
It did?
It did. It was remarkable. I was laughing so much.
Worth the investment in time, then. It's
Certainly. This was on my own time, thankfully, but still.
Great. Well, that was a really interesting talk again, Anders. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's another great talk. So thank you so much.